Oh man, are we going to cover so much in this video tutorial? We're going to cover how to composite an image, how to transform an entire photo from being daylight to the middle of the night, add stars to the sky, and add digital artwork to the skies in the form of these sort of alien attack ships, and how to do like a full composite within the realm of that, and everything that's involved with that. From selecting and masking to coloring and sharpening and adding grain and just more things than I can even bear to remember in this short intro. Let's get started with it right now. Hey everybody, welcome into this Photoshop tutorial brought to you, as always, by tutvid.com. Now today we're going to talk about transforming an image from broad daylight to nighttime, but it's not really going to stop there because we're going to build this whole sort of like space attack scene and composite this soldier in on top of it. I think it's going to be a bunch of fun. We're just going to throw a bunch of stuff at the wall, see what sticks, have some fun, create some kind of something. I have an example here of what we're going to create, so let's check it out. You can see here it is. Now, let me just give you a quick before and after. The image with which we will begin is this guy right here, and you can see shot during the daytime, and then a few layers later, and it's the middle of the night, and there's all kinds of other stuff going on. Now, you can go and download this image, and this image here, I've got it available. Sadly, I can't give away the UFO because I don't remember where I got it from, and the special operations guy is a purchase stock photo, so you'd have to come up with your own model that would sit in here, or go to Dreamstime or Unsplash or one of these stock photography sites and grab some sort of model with which you wish to drop in. And then UFO, you'll see we're going to have some like a spaceship brushes that we're going to be using. But you can download this photo and this photo. I have it just as a PSD, day to night start here.psd. If you run over to my website, so there's going to be a link down in the description. What you can do is basically trade me your email address, sign up for my newsletter, boom, a window or a tab will pop up. You got to make sure your pop-up blocker is temporarily shut off just so that the pop-up can actually, or not pop-up, the new tab can pop up. And then, you know, there you'll have a link to grab that file and you can follow right along. The brushes that we're using, well, I've got them right over here in Google Chrome. There are a couple brushes and I'll link these in the description as well. They're all free from brusheasy.com. There's spaceships brushes and then this sort of space brushes collection. And then you're going to want some sort of lens flare pack. This isn't the exact one I'm using. I don't remember which one I'm using. But you basically want to have a flare that's long and thin like this right here. So this is the lens flare pack that I would grab. And again, I'm going to link these in the description to this video. So good there. We're going to begin with this image, and we're going to talk about, first of all, replacing the sky. So we want to add sort of this bluish, cloudy sky to a very, very clear sky here over Philadelphia. This is a photo I shot a couple years ago. There's actually some additional buildings here in our skyline now, but we're not worried about that right now, are we? So I've got this clouds image, and what we really need to do is begin by, we can shut that layer off entirely, go down to our Philadelphia layer. I'm just going to name this PHILA for Phila. And on this layer, I'm going to go ahead and quickly make a selection of the sky. Now, I do want to mention right here, I'm going to speed through the selection right here, but I'm starting this new sort of, I'm going to call them trash tutorials or trash can tutorials or outtake tutorials. I don't know. I haven't figured out the name yet, but basically it's going to be stuff like this where I speed it up in the video because I still record the whole thing and maybe it'll be of value to somebody. So instead of just deleting all the footage or speeding through it, it'll be a separate tutorial that I upload. I'll try to find a way to like mark and tag the video. So if it's just something you're not interested in, no worries, you can pass it up. You don't have to check it out, but just something that's coming up. So I'm going to speed through this right now, but I am still going to be recording it because, well, it's going to be its own little video. All right, so we went ahead and we created that selection, and guys, like I mentioned at the very beginning of this video, that was all sped up, but that's going to be a tutorial that comes out at a later date, at least some point after this video comes out, where I'll explain kind of everything I did in this selection. Just didn't want to bog things down here in this video. Let's keep it flowing. Let's keep it going. Here we go. We've got this channel called Sky02, and it is our selection. we are going to use this to mask our sky into place. And here's how we're going to do it. I'm going to hit the eyeball here to turn my original layer or my composite RGB channel back on. We're going to go back to our layers. You can see I've got the clouds. First thing I'm going to do is move the clouds into place. In fact, actually, before I do that, see any of these light poles that are sticking up? I actually went in and knocked some of these signs and things down using the healing brush tool. I'm going to double click on my clouds layer. I'm going to zoom in here, and I'm going to get rid of just a couple of these light poles because I have a feeling some of them might be in the way. I'm going to Alt or Option click. I just grab the healing brush tool here, not the spot healing brush, but the healing brush. Hold down Alt or Option, and I'm just going to, voila, paint over a couple of these guys. Just knock them out of there, just in case they want to cause us some problems. We're going to make sure that they don't. That's probably good enough. All right, because this is a smart object, just Command or Control S to save it. It's the .psb file. I'm going to go ahead and close it. Here we are back in our day to night start here .psd. What we can do is go ahead and select this. I'm going to zoom out just a little bit. It's Command or Control minus, by the way. Grab the move tool. I'm going to slide this guy right up there. You can see the corner's kind of bent because I did some lens correction on this bad boy. And then I'm going to go Edit Free Transform, and I'm going to slide this guy into place, kind of something like that. And I'm going to right-click and choose Perspective because I'm going to stretch the perspective at the top of this photo out. I really want to fake the perspective and build this depth in the sky because the horizon is way off in the distance in the photo, so I want to sort of build this distance. In fact, the horizon's a little bit further than the photo of the clouds. So the horizon here looks further away from the camera than it does here in this photo. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to reduce the opacity of this layer a little bit. And you can see our horizon in this photo is like down here, but the horizon for our image up here is way up here. So I'm going to right click and choose Scale, and I'm going to just push things upward a little bit. Maybe kind of like that. That's probably good. Stretch things out a little bit. And then I'll probably even stretch things out to the side this way. Kind of just like that. That's probably great. I'm going to commit the change. It's going to place my sky right there. Let's set the opacity back to 100%. Now that we have our sky kind of positioned where we want it to and free transformed and stretched and perspectived and all that good stuff, go to Channels, Command or Control click the Sky to channel. We're going to go back to Layers. We've got our Clouds layer selected. Go Layer Mask. Reveal Selection. And you can see we have this nice sort of mask in place. Now I'm going to zoom in, and it looks like I need to do a little bit more tweaking here. I've got a little bit too much stuff showing here. And the same thing over here and over here, right? See how it almost looks like foggy and hazy? But before we do anything, let's just convert this or set this to the layer blend mode of multiply. This is a great way to just quickly blend a sky together. And you know what? It actually doesn't look too bad. I kind of like the way it's overlaying. It's really helping our horizon blend together. I'm not even going to touch it. I like the way I masked it. You can see everything else with the buildings all works really well. But you could try other blend modes as well. Overlay sometimes looks nice. Or even if you do something like multiply and just reduce the opacity, you can see you get some clouds and color in the sky. But like there was our sky before. The opacity reset on me. There we go. Let's try. There's our sky before. There's our sky after. So you can play with the opacity and blend modes. I'm going multiply with an opacity of 100%. All right, and next up what we're going to do is Command or Control click on this mask. It's going to load it as a selection, and we're going to add a Curves Adjustment layer. And I think I'm going to brighten the sky a little bit, just kind of bring it into balance with the rest of the photo. Right, so I'm just going to pull up on my curve a little bit. Maybe I'll pull down here. It's going to introduce a little bit of contrast. I don't want to go too hog wild with it. I can even reduce the opacity a little bit and just dial it in perfectly if I'm playing around with it. The next thing that I want to do is add, I'll probably go with Selective Color. I could go with Color Balance. I'm going to mess with Selective Color here. I really want to start giving this whole image kind of like some purple tones, some magenta tones, some blue tones. We're going for a nighttime look. So I'm going to go to the neutrals, and I'm going to increase the magenta. And maybe that's a little bit too much. And then blue is the opposite of yellow, so if I reduce yellow, I get blue, right? So I'm going to reduce the yellow a little bit, and maybe I'll increase cyan, or maybe red. No, I think I'll increase cyan, just a couple little bits. And I'm not going to mess with the blacks, I don't think. Maybe I'll go +1 on the black. I can even go down to the blacks here, and I can try pumping a little magenta into the blacks. That's really going to attack the shadows in the image, so I want to be careful. I don't want to like wash them out. See if I reduce black from the blacks of the image, you get that really faded like Instagram filter effect. I want to be careful adding too much color and doing something similar with color. So we're just going to go +4 on the magenta slider. You can see there's before, there's after. So we're just increasing contrast and helping with the color a little bit. Now, before we go any further, guys, I want to remind you, I'm selling a course over on tutvid.com. Link just appeared right there. It's all about how to retouch photos. So if you like this, you're going to love that course that appeared right up there, all about how to retouch photos. You pick up a copy. It helps support what I do here, allows me to keep cranking this stuff out. I want to get 5 videos out a week, 6 videos a week or more. I want to create so much great stuff on this channel that it's an indispensable tool for any photographer, graphic designer, video editor, anything. Anybody who's interested in Adobe products, got to be subscribed to TutVid. That's what I want to turn this thing into. That's what I'm working 18, 19, 20 hours a day to do, and I'm not going to stop till I do it. But it starts with lending a little bit of support. It really helps out if you pick up a copy of the course that I'm selling. If not, like, everything's still free, and I don't hate you. I love you just as much. But just make sure you subscribe. You know, that's cool too. Let's get back to the video here. So next up, we're going to go ahead. Anything that we think needs a little bit of light, we're going to add light to it now before we do much more darkening. I think the clock face should be illuminated, and maybe the windows here on the top of this building should be illuminated as well. So we're going to do that with a pale yellow, and we might add like a little tiny light to the top of a couple of these pointed towers as well. Something like that might be cool. So what we'll do is we will create a new solid color adjustment layer, right? So hit that little half white, half black circle, solid color, and I'm going to go to the hue slider, and I'm going to choose a very pale yellow, so the FFE88E, something like that. That looks great. We're going to select the layer mask here and hit Command or Control I. That's going to fill it with black and hide all of that color. Great. Now what I'm going to do is zoom in here. I'm going to zoom in on the face of the clock first. And this is pretty simple. Just grab the ellipse marquee tool, or the elliptical marquee tool, I should say, and we're going to drag a little selection out and get a nice perfect circle here around the face of the clock. We have the mask selected, and we can just hit Command or Control I. Just going to invert the mask and show white. Command or Control D to deselect. Great. So we have our first little selection there. The next thing is we do have a little bit of the clock face showing right there. So what we'll do is we'll use our elliptical marquee tool, maybe kind of like that. All right, we'll make that selection, and then we got to switch to the rectangular marquee tool, hold down the Alt-Option key, and subtract from this selection, and cut away a chunk of our selection, give us that nice straight edge there. And again, with the mask selected, hit Command or Control I, and invert that little selection, hit Command or Control D to deselect. So right now, if I zoom out a little bit, we can see both of our clock faces are going to be illuminated. Great. Let's move down here to this. I think this is going to be a job for the Poly Lasso tool, so let's grab that. We're going to zip right through this. Great, 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 good, boom, cool. And again, we're on the mask, Command or Control I to invert that, Command or Control D to deselect. So we're just inverting the colors of the mask, switching it from pure black to pure white, and pure white is going to show all of the color. Great. Let's zoom in here. I think each of the tips of these towers look kind of cool with maybe just like a little dab of light in them. So let's try something like that. Let's grab our brush tool, and I really probably should grab, maybe I'm going to load in some flares. Remember we talked about the flares at the beginning of this tutorial. I'm going to go load brushes because I'm going to load in some brushes here, and I'm going to load in my optical flares. So whatever flares you got, load those flares in. Let's see what we've got with some just nice side-to-side flares. Now these are way too big. There we go. This is probably better. I want to paint with the color white. Set the opacity of my brush tool to 100%. And I'm just going to click maybe once or twice on the top of that tower. Let's go with the different brush for the next tower. Let's actually put the nice small light on the top of this tower here. Something like that. And then let's go with, I don't know, we can grab any of them. We really don't need to be picky. Let's go with this guy here. Right on the top of this tower. There we go, something like that. So we've got some lights on the top of our towers, and we've got what will be lights here on the clock face and the opening on the top of this building. Okay, I'm going to go back to my Move tool. I'm going to set the blend mode of this solid color layer to the soft light blend mode. We can see it almost makes the light disappear. That's pretty good. We want it to be a very subtle effect. Maybe that's too subtle. Let's hit Command or Control J to duplicate that effect. I like that a lot more. We can zoom in on the clock. You can see how the clock is, like, the edges almost look too perfect. One of the things that we can do is... Well, no, you know, we're gonna leave it the way it is. Maybe what we'll do is we'll blur the mask here on this top layer to give it some kind of side-to-side light movement, and all these could use that, I guess. Let's go filter. Let's go blur. Let's choose motion blur, and we'll blur it straight side to side. So let's go 0 on the distance, and maybe make the distance, try 75. Something like that's probably cool. Hit OK, and you can see how now everything just kind of has that nice, it's just a little bit of like a shuttery glow to it. Kind of cool. I think it's going to interact well with all the elements we stack on top of this. All right, great. I just saved the file real quickly. The next thing we want to do is reduce the contrast a little bit here with a levels adjustment layer. So we're going to come up here and choose a levels adjustment layer. I'm going to worry about the output sliders here. I'm going to bump the blacks up, and I'm going to bump the whites down, thereby reducing the contrast a little bit. Great. We're reducing the contrast because we're going to throw a gradient map adjustment layer on top of this. This is the gradient map adjustment layer here. I'm going to select my gradient stripe, and we're going to choose a gradient that runs from the color 3D 2C49, which is kind of like this purpley color, and we're going to run it to a brighter pink, something maybe like E6B0FF. So it's kind of more of that lavendery pink. Hit OK. A lot of pinky, purpley colors we're introducing here. And the reason we reduced contrast is because we're going to set this to the blend mode soft light, and therein infuse a ton of contrast. So you can see doing that just kind of like helps the image still retain some of the balance which it had before. I'm going to throw another curves adjustment layer here. I'm going to pull down on the whites to kind of help darken them up a little bit. And I'm going to push the sort of high midtones up. I'm going to pull some of the shadows down. So this is going to kind of like increase contrast a little bit while flattening all of the whites out. So you can see my curve line. Maybe I'll flatten the whites a little bit more. That looks pretty cool. So you can see there's before and after the curves adjustment. All right, so next up, we want to create the first lens flare. And we're going to do this by creating a new layer. And we're going to call this flare. If I can spell correctly, there we go, flare. Grab the brush tool. Where's my brush tool? There's my brush tool. I'm going to right-click, and I do have all of these optical flares. I think I'm going to load in the space stuff. There's the spaceship brushes. We don't need them quite yet. I believe it's down here. Space collection. I think there's a flare in this space collection. Let's see here if there's anything good. Maybe not. Maybe we'll use one of our flares here. So just, of the flares that you have, choose some kind of flare that you think looks pretty decent. I'm going to just use the color white, and let's try placing that. Yeah, that's not too bad. I'm going to try to place the very center of the flare. I want it to be like right next to this, the old Bell telephone tower. So something like that works pretty well. I'm going to Command or Control J to duplicate that flare. All right. Now the bottom flare, I'm going to shut the top flare off for a second. The bottom flare, I'm going to go Image Adjustments, Hue Saturation, because we're going to colorize this. We're going to go Colorize, and I'm going to reduce the brightness, increase the saturation quite a bit, and I'm going to make it, like blue or light blue, something like that. And that's pretty cool. Hit OK. And we're going to set the blend mode of this to screen. There we go. And now the top part of the flare, we're going to set to the blend mode linear dodge add, and I'm going to reduce the fill opacity of it until it kind of starts to look a little bit more like a natural flare. Reduce the overall opacity of the screened blue flare. All right. And by mixing the two, we get a pretty natural looking flare that's going to hang out back there. I don't want it to like dominate the image though, so just, knock it back until it still looks realistic, but not intrusive. There we go. That's pretty good. Now that we have this flare in place, we want to go ahead and add stars to the sky. So we've got our clouds and whatnot. We really want to darken things up here and add some clouds to the sky. In fact, I can probably even go back to my levels adjustment here and just darken up the overall image a little bit more. So something kind of like that. Just give it a couple ticks of darkness. So I did that by just grabbing the mid-tone slider and pulling it toward the white slider a little bit, opening up those blacks or the darker tones in the image. Great. Let's go back up to the top here. And I've got some stock photos here. Whoop, wrong finder. Here we go. This is the right finder. I have these two starry night.jpg images. I'm going to work with them. I'm going to drag the first one in. Let's check it out. This is pretty cool. I'm going to drag it over, maybe leave it about the size it is, right? It looks pretty decent the way it is. Something like that. Commit that change. And what we're going to do is set this to the blend mode of screen. This should effectively get rid of pretty much everything except the stars, as you see. I'm not really digging how these stars are kind of falling out of focus and not like perfect. Maybe let's try flipping this. So Command or Control T, right-click, flip horizontal, and maybe even stretch this out a little bit. So that's going to make kind of all of the stars not quite perfect, but get rid of some of the really bad stars over there. And that's not too bad. We want to mask this using our same channel mask, so I'm going to just Command or Control click on that. I have that layer selected, and I can just hit the new mask icon right down here, and we've masked our stars to the sky. If there are any stars you think are particularly, nasty, we can tone them down using the brush tool. Right click and choose, like one of your big soft edge brushes and set the opacity to like 30-40%. Paint with the foreground color set to black, and you can see tap over them, and it's going to kind of darken them up a little bit. It's all about just whatever looks good. Get rid of any stars that look out of place. Some of the stars are just way too close to the horizon. They just don't look good. So I'm going over them. I'm just clicking with my mouse a couple times and just getting rid of anything that just looks sort of out of place. All right, this is just our first pass of stars anyway, so don't sweat over it too much. You can see if I Alt or Option click on my mask, I went and just darkened up parts of the sky. No problemo. Let's go back to the Finder. I'm going to drag in my other Starry Night JPEG image. Now this one I think I'm going to rotate onto its side and make it a little bit smaller. Maybe something like that. And then I'm going to Alt or Option. Whoops, I'm going to grab my Move tool. Alt or Option and just drag a second copy of these stars over. And then Alt or Option and maybe even drag a third copy of the stars over. Something like that, and then maybe Command or Control T, right click, flip horizontal to just mix things up a little bit. There we go. And now what we need to do is blend all these together and mask them to our sky. So what I think I'm going to do is go to Channels, Command or Control click on that channel to give us our sky, and just go through these layers one at a time. So here's the first layer, add the mask. And now that I've created one mask, hold down the Alt or Option key and drag that mask up, and that'll copy it to at whatever layer basically you drag and drop it onto. Now select the original layer. We're going to set the blend mode of each of these guys to screen like we just did before. So we got screen, screen. You can see there's really bad overlap. Don't worry about that. We're going to fix it here. And screen. So let's fix the overlap and make this thing look beautiful. So first things first, I can see the edge of my first bit of stars is way out here. So select the mask. We're going to grab our brush tool, and I'm going to bring the opacity up to like 80-90%. I'm going to make it nice and large. You can just right click, and I may set mine up to 800%. And I'm going to paint along there. And you can see it just blends that edge right together. All right, and then over here we've got two edges. So with this one, the edge, we're going to select the mask for this sort of center star layer, and you can see the edge of the stars is right there. So we want to make sure we get rid of that, paint that right away. And then last but not least, this guy up here, we're going to paint away the edge of his stars. We're going to make sure there's nothing distracting hanging out here looking or making us look bad. All right, so there we go. We've added our stars to the sky, and they all look pretty decent. We probably want to get rid of the stars, however, that are above the clouds, right? It's not too terribly realistic. Now, I'm going to do this, I think, by let's shut off basically all of the layers except the clouds layer. So I'm going to Alt or Option click on the clouds layer. Leave that right there. I'm going to Shift click on the mask to shut the mask off temporarily. And I'm going to go Select Color. Well, I want to make sure I select that layer. And then I'm going to go Select Color Range. And I'm going to try just clicking on the clouds. You can see it's going to give us a pretty decent selection of kind of just the clouds. So something like that. Fuzziness around 50 seems to work pretty well. Hit OK. You can see we've got a nice selection loaded. It's not terribly perfect. Maybe let's try it again. See if we can get a little bit more of the clouds in there. I'm going to hold down my Shift key and click a couple more times to try to expand my selection a little bit. There we go, something like that. Hit OK. Yeah, that looks a lot better. We've got a lot more of the clouds at least. Let's Shift click to turn the mask back on, and Option or Alt or Option click the layer mask there. I'm sorry, the layer eyeball there. Let's go back up here. Now to each of these layers, what we want to do is select the layer mask and then hit Command or Control L. This brings up our levels adjustment. We're actually applying a levels adjustment straight to the layer mask. All I want to do is bring the white in the layer mask down. So I'm going to, that's bringing the white up. We want to use the output levels, grab the white slider, and bring the white in the masks down. I'm not going to bring it all the way down. I'm going to bring it maybe like 3/4 of the way down. Hit OK. Go to the next mask, Command or Control L to bring up levels. Bring the whites down. Hit OK. You can see how the stars behind these clouds are almost entirely disappearing. And if it's not quite enough, we'll go back over it again, and we'll take a look, and we'll keep tweaking it. Watch for the stars here in the middle, because this is our middle stars. All right, you can see how they start disappearing. Let's look at the stars over on the right-hand side. You're going to see them start to disappear. All right, yeah, I think actually cranking the levels down even a bit more is going to be even better. So let's really rip down on them. All right, let's go back to this. Grabbing that output white, good. And then last but not least, for our main, kind of the overall stars layer, cover that up. I don't want it to be totally, I still want to be able to see the stars a very, very tiny bit through the clouds because I do kind of want it to look, you know, somewhat realistic, if you will. So you can see there's before the stars, there's after the stars. It's a very complex mask we've created. You can see 4 different masks, and we've got all of our stars. They're all set to the blend mode screen, and we've got a sky that looks pretty decent. Now, next up, we're going to throw a selective color adjustment layer onto this, and we're going to go back to the neutrals here. I think we're going to boost the blacks to darken the overall image. I think I want to do this up in the whites as well, as boost blacks and darken kind of the brighter parts of the image. Not really. See what that's doing? That's just flattening out all of my clouds. That's not really what I want to do. So I could go neutrals. I think actually I'm going to throw a curves adjustment onto this as well and pull down on the brighter parts of this image. Something kind of like that. But maybe boost some of the darker pixels. I just really want to bring down the brightness of the sky and what's going on up there. There we go, something kind of sort of like that. There's before, there's after. We're killing off a little contrast, don't worry about that. And then our selective color is doing a little bit of darkening as well. We just threw that curves on there just because I thought we kind of needed it. Flatten things out, darken up the sky a very little bit. Now I want to kill off a little bit of the color as well as we move forward. So I'm going to grab a black and white adjustment layer here and maybe boost the blues. Remember, there's a lot of blues and a lot of magentas in our image. So we can really use these sliders and take advantage of how this is going to affect the image. I kind of want it to be a very, very flat black and white because we're just going to set the opacity of this whole entire layer to like 20%. It's just going to serve to kill off some of the color. We could use a vibrant saturation layer, but I like to have the color channel controls that black and white gives me, and I can still control the vibrance and saturation, or really the saturation straight up, just by using the opacity slider here in the layers panel. So a little bit different, but also a little bit more control in a different sort of way. And now to add a little bit more color and contrast to the sky, I think what we should do is go ahead and add a new layer. And we're going to call this magenta top down. And I'm going to select like a magenta here from the sky. So I'm going to grab my eyedropper tool. Maybe I'll go with like that sort of bluish, magenta, purplish color. I have a hard time differentiating between blue and purple. Some say I'm partially colorblind. I don't know. And because that's my foreground color, I'm going to select that gradient stripe, and I'm going to choose the foreground to transparent option. So we're going to go with that dark bluish, purplish color to nothing. I'm going to hit OK. And remember, I'm on this magenta top-down layer. This really should be like purple top-down. And I'm going to pull this kind of magenta wash or purple wash over my image. And I'm going to set this to the blend mode of, I'm going to try soft light. So let's go soft light. You can see what that's doing up there in the sky. I can reduce the opacity of this a little bit if I think it needs to be just eased off just a little bit. So maybe set it to more like 70% opacity. That might be good. And I think one of the things we should try at this point is to darken the tops of these buildings. Remember, they're not sticking up closer to sunlight. They're going to be sticking up closer to a dark sky now, so they definitely should, there should be no doubt about it that they are dark like the ground. So what I'm going to try doing here is Command or Control click to load our mask, our original mask. But what I need to do is invert the mask. So I need, or invert the selection, I should say, not the mask, the selection. So we're going to go select inverse. So now we're selecting the buildings in the ground. Great. And I'm going to set my foreground color back to black, and I'm going to apply a gradient adjustment layer, or gradient fill layer. So that's that little circle, half black, half white, and then choose gradient. And I'm going to go foreground to transparent, but this time because black is my foreground color, I get black to transparent. I need to change the angle, so I'm going to go -90. That's going to flip things over. You can see, there we go. Now the tops of the buildings are black. Hit OK, and it just fades to nothingness. I'm going to set the blend mode here to soft light, and now the buildings are obviously way too dark, so let's just reduce the opacity. I mean, I'm going to bring it way down, like 20, 25%, something like that. I just want something that adds a little bit of darkness up there, isn't like crazy overpowering, but definitely I need the tops of my buildings to be darkened a little bit. So things are about to get pretty exciting. We're getting ready to load in some sky elements, spaceships, stuff like that. Cool stuff. If you're liking what you're seeing so far, we've transformed a daytime photo to what's heading into a night, starry skies type photo. If you like what you've seen so far, make sure you subscribe to my channel. Helps the channel grow, keeps me building this thing, and also slap a like on this video. The more a video gets liked, the more other people get to come in and enjoy what you're seeing as well. Let's get back to the video. All right, so it's time to talk about loading up all of our brushes, and I've already loaded 2 of the brush packs in here. I'm going to go back to my brush tool and right-click, and I've loaded my optical flares and sort of the space junk brush pack. I'm going to go to the little flyout menu here and choose Load Brushes. Last thing we're going to load in are the spaceship brushes. So there it is, 20 spaceshipbrushes.abr. And here we go. We've got our little spaceships. And these are those brush packs that I pointed you to at the very beginning of the video. from brusheasy.com. They're all free. You can use them, and they're a lot of fun. So let's first of all go ahead and add a little moon to the sky, like up over here. So let's take this crescent moon right here, and I'm going to create a new layer, and I'm going to name it Moon. And now that I'm on this layer, you can see the moon far, far, far too big, and I need my opacity to be at 100% when I paint with this, by the way. I'm going to right-click, and I've got this little circle here. I'm going to grab the arrow, and I'm going to rotate, and I'm going to rotate, and I'm going to rotate back a little bit. So we've got a moon that's going to kind of plant itself right in there, but I need the color of the moon to be probably white, something like that, or like a very palish, you know, a color that's going to blend into the sky a little bit. Right-click, let's make our moon a little bit smaller, or a lot bit smaller. Throw that moon up in the sky. Maybe up over there. That's probably cool. Let's try setting the blend mode to like overlay. No, not overlay. Maybe soft light. Soft light's a little bit too subtle. What does screen look like? No. Yeah, you know, let's set it to screen and just reduce the opacity a little bit. I want it to blend in, but still kind of be noticeable. And one of the things we could do is we might want to get rid of the stars behind the moon, or the stars on top of the moon, excuse me. If we want to do that, what we want to do is select our Starry Night layers. So grab Starry Night 2, hold down Shift, grab Starry Night, and just the original Starry Night. So we select all 4 stars layers. This is going to be important, too, when we start adding spaceships to the sky. So this is a necessary step we need to take anyway. Select all 4 of those layers, hit Command or Control G to group them up, and we're going to name this group Stars. The reason I'm doing this is because we're going to apply a layer mask to the Stars group. Why do I want to do this? Well, number one, so we don't have to go and fill in 4 more layer masks with stuff, but also this is going to be the mask that controls stars being covered by objects we place in outer space or in the atmosphere in general. We're breaking that out onto its own mask here, so if we need to like move an airplane or a spaceship or something, we can quickly just grab that mask, paint over that with white to show the stars again, and then hide them behind the aircraft again very quickly and easily. It'll all make sense when we add the aircraft in just a moment. Let's Command or Control click the moon layer. So we load that as a selection, go back to the stars mask here, and then I'm just going to hit Command or Control I to fill it with black, and then hit Command or Control D. And you can see there are no longer any stars on top of our little moon. In fact, I can go back up to the moon now and probably increase the opacity a little bit and make it look a little bit more realistic. It's a little devoid of texture for my liking, but we'll just throw it up there. It'll become more of just an atmospheric element. Now I'm going to come over here to my UFO.psd, and I've got this UFO here. I'm going to drag this in. I wish I could share this file with you guys. I just honestly can't remember where I got it and if I'm even allowed to share it. But, you know, Google around, Google Images if you're doing something for yourself, and just find an image of a UFO, cut it out, and you've got this UFO. I'm going to name the layer UFO. I'm actually going to right-click and convert it to a smart object because it's a little bigger than I want it to be. I'm going to scale it down, but just so I can always scale it back up, I'm converting it to that smart object. Command or Control T to free transform, hold down Shift, and we're going to scale this puppy down. Maybe somewhere right around there. And I'm going to try setting it to the blend mode of like multiply, see if that helps it blend in a little bit more. Yeah, I kind of think that blends it a little bit. You could almost reduce the opacity just a touch. Now, obviously, behind this UFO, you can see stars are peering through it. So we need to get rid of those stars. So Command or Control click on the UFO, go down to that stars layer group layer mask, and we're going to set our foreground color to black, hold down Alt or Option and hit the delete key. Option delete on the Mac, Alt backspace on the PC, and then Command or Control D to deselect. See how much more realistic that looks now? Looks like it's just kind of hanging out there in outer space. You can't see any stars through it. We can go back to our UFO here. And we want to build some light trails kind of coming off the edge of the UFO. And we're going to do this rather quickly with the pen tool. If you've never used the pen tool before, I've got a great tutorial on it. And just go to my channel and search pen tool. And I've actually a bunch of videos on the pen tool will come up. But we're going to grab the pen tool here. I'm going to choose to make a path. I don't want to make a pixel shape or a shape. What I want to do here is start right about here, pull out some tangent handles, and wrap right around the edge of the UFO, kind of like this. And I'm looking to I'm going to hit the Enter or Return key here. It looks like, whoop, what did I do to my path? It's located over here in the Paths panel right here, Work Path. In fact, I'm going to double-click and call this UFO-trail. Whoops, that's trial. There's trail. And you can see there it is. I really want the trail to be coming off sort of that crease in the UFO right there. You see that? That's where I want it to be coming from. And what I'm going to do now is create a few new layers. Well, we're going to work with one new layer at a time. Create one new layer, and I'm going to call this UFO trail. There we go. And I'm going to grab my brush tool. Where's the brush tool? There it is. Right-click with the brush tool, and I'm going to choose 4 pixels, maybe 6 pixels. Maybe it should be more like 7 pixels, and hard edged. Now that we have UFO trail, what I want to do is I want to just stroke this with a white, just va-va-voom. So I'm going to hit the letter D to reset my foreground and background colors, and then I'm going to hit this little arrow, double-sided arrow, to make sure white is my foreground color. I'm working on a blank layer, UFO trail. I'm going to go back to my paths panel. There's UFO trail. I'm going to right-click and choose stroke path. I'm going to stroke it with the brush tool. Remember, we just did all those settings. We set it to 7 pixels, 100% hardness. Great. Hit OK, and voila. There we go. We have this nice sort of path coming off of our UFO. If we drag UFO trail beneath the UFO, you can see the majority of it. It kind of comes out from behind the UFO. We need to do some work to it because we don't want it to be see-through. We probably even want to get rid of this little bit now, but we're going to mess with all that in just a moment. Let's nudge this. I guess let's nudge it over a little bit. I'm going to grab my move tool. I'm going to nudge it right over this way, just like that. We want to sort of triple and quadruple, or probably triple this trail. So I'm going to hit Command-Control-J to duplicate the trail. So now we got 2 trails. I'm going to hit Command-Control-T to free transform. I'm looking for this little center point here in the middle of my transform box. I'm going to drag that up to sort of the fulcrum, if you will. The fulcrum would be here coming off the front end of the UFO. And I'm going to rotate this trail downward just a little bit. So you can see we're kind of getting this, I don't know, like splitting something effect. And I hit Command-Control-J again, Command-Control-T. Again, move our little reference point up there to the fulcrum. And I'm going to move it into place. There we go. Voila. And I'm going to drag this down as well. This path I'm going to make sure is much, much closer. So you can see one's a little bit further away, one's a bit closer. Great. Now what we can do is simply go ahead. We need to duplicate all 3 of these trails because we want to leave these white. So we're going to select all 3 layers, select the top one, hold down Shift, select the bottom one, hit Command or Control-J, and we're going to shut all these layers off because we're going to work with these 3 layers now. I want my top trail to be blue. So I'm going to hit Command or Control-U to bring up hue saturation. I'm going to go colorize, reduce the brightness, increase saturation. Oh, this is the bottom one. So the bottom one, we're going to make this one more like a pinkish red. So I'm going to bring over here, bring my hue over. You can see I'm getting like this very hot pink color. That's pretty cool. I dig it. Maybe I'll make it a little bit brighter. Something like that. Great. Now I'm going to go to the UFO trail in the middle. I'm going to hit Command-Option. This would be Control-Alt and the letter U on the PC. This is going to open up your hue saturation dialog box with the last used setting. So the only thing I need to do is shift my hue slider back toward the blues a little bit. You can see I'm going to get more of like a purplish, pinkish, very hot pink color, less of that sort of reddish pink color. Hit OK. And then for the final UFO trail, Command-Option-U, it'd be Control-Alt-U again on the PC. We're going to shift this back to get a very definite blue. Maybe I'll go with a lighter blue color for my trail. There we go. Hit OK. Great. And what we want to do is blur these UFO trails. So starting with this UFO trail, go Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, maybe like 3 pixels. 4 pixels actually looked good. Let's go 4 pixels. Great. Select the second UFO trail. Just Command or Control F to reapply that same filter, and the same thing for the last one. Great. We've done that. Cool. All 3 of these UFO trails can now be set to the blend mode screen like we always seem to do with these kind of flary effects. Now we're going to go to the other UFO trails, and we're going to set these to the blend mode of linear dodge add. I'm going to select both of the last 2 layers, linear dodge add, and we're going to reduce the fill opacity. I've just selected all 3 of these white layers. I'm going to reduce the fill opacity down, something like 20%. And then I'm going to select all 3 of the screened layers and reduce the opacity of them. I really want to reduce the fill opacity of these linear dodge layers even more and bump up. I think I want to keep the opacity of these other colored layers pretty high. So something like that, that'll be pretty cool. Now that we have all of these UFO trails, we can select them all and hit Command or Control-G to pop them into their own group. We'll call this UFO trails. Great. And we will apply a layer mask to this layer. So that layer group. Throw that layer mask on there, and now is where we will get rid of all the stuff running beneath the UFO, and probably even the stuff up here. I think it's a little distracting. Doesn't quite look like I thought it would look. So let's Command or Control click to load our UFO as a selection. Go into our UFO trails layer mask there. And we've got black as our foreground color. Hit Option Delete on the Mac. That'd be Alt Backspace on the PC. Command or Control D to deselect. And then just go ahead and grab your brush tool here. Right click, make it a little bit larger, paint with black, and just paint away that stuff right there at the top. So you can see we just have this kind of like streaking effect coming out of the side of the UFO. Now I probably would like each of these colors to be a little bit of a different length. And obviously these can be any colors. They can be 1, they could be 10 of these little lines. It can be anything. We're just creating a little bit of an effect here. Let's create a mask here that will shorten these for us. So let's begin with the line on top. So this is that sort of like cyan colored line. Let's throw a layer mask onto that layer. Grab our brush tool here. I want a huge brush. I'm going to right click and make it big and no hardness, very soft edges. And I'm going to paint with black, just something kind of like that. And then I'm going to Alt or Option and drag that layer mask up to the corresponding white tail. So both of those will kind of tail off at the same place. I'm going to do the same thing here with what would be the center or pink UFO trail. There we go. And then I'm going to Alt or Option copy that mask up. So we've got that fading off. And then this bottom reddish line will be the shortest one. So here you can see that's that reddish one. I'm going to add a layer mask and I'm going to paint it all the way back to like there. And then I'm going to Alt or Option, drag that up. And you can see just like that, we mix up the length of the UFO trails, kind of like that. And if this is definitely where you want to keep the UFO, we could even make these trails duck behind the building by just Command or Control clicking this layer mask here where the buildings are selected. And then in the UFO trails layer group mask here, paint with the color black. And we're just going to paint with black here on the sides of the buildings. Just kind of like that, Command or Control D. So again, it is as if those colored streaks are coming out from behind the building. And probably they would be fading off into the distance. So really probably a good idea would be to grab your brush tool once you've covered them up on the building, set the layer or the brush tool opacity to like 30% or so, make it huge, and just paint maybe like once, twice, something like that. So the trails are kind of fading as they get, definitively farther away from the camera position, and the UFO is flying toward the camera. So it's a lot of detail work here. One of the other things I want to do is add some lights to the bottom of the UFO. So I'm going to create a new layer here. I'm going to call this Lights UFO. It's all going to be worth it. It's all these details, all these little effects and techniques that you learn here in the details that make such a big difference. So what I want to do is grab the ellipse tool. I'm going to just draw a path, and we're going to we want to make sure there's no path or anything selected. We're going to just create like a nice oval like this. I'm going to hit Command or Control T, and I'm going to rotate this oval. It's Command or Control T. And I'm just going to look to line the oval up kind of with, you can see this line here on the side of this UFO. See that sort of lip? I'm going to look to line this up with that. Something kind of like so. It probably needs to be rotated a little bit more. Cool. Let me just crunch this down a little bit more. Something kind of like that, I think, works. It's going to say, look, it's going to turn into a live shape, or from a live shape into a regular path. Do we want to continue? Absolutely. All I need is the regular path. And now that we've done that, to create like a little series of lights, just once again, grab your brush tool, set the opacity of the brush tool, make sure it's 100%, right-click, hardness should be at 100%. Size, let's go like 4 pixels. We don't want this to be big at all. Maybe 4 pixels is even too big. Let's try 3. And what I'm going to do is open up the brush panel here. And I want to come down to the very bottom here. We're in the brush tip shape options. Increase spacing to 1000%, all right? And now we're going to do exactly what we did before. We're working on a blank layer, Lights UFO. Go up to, not channels, go up to paths. We have this work path. In fact, let's call this Lights UFO, just so it's saved and we know what it's there for. Right-click and choose Stroke Path. We're going to stroke it with the brush tool. What are we stroking with? 4 pixels. Hard-edged brush with 1000% spacing. Hit OK, and you can see what we get are a bunch of little dots, a bunch of little lights. And if 4 pixels or 3 pixels isn't big enough, let's go 5 pixels, right? And then make sure you open up your brush dialog and make sure that spacing is at 1000%. When you choose a new brush preset, it's going to reset. Let's go back to Lights UFO, right-click, Stroke Path, stroke it with the brush. Great. There we go, something like that. It looks pretty good. Now you can see these aren't quite right, so what we can do is grab our eraser tool and just erase both of these. Let's make the eraser tool a bit smaller even. I'm going to erase both of those dots, go back to my brush tool, and I'm just going to manually place one light right there. So you can see we've got this nice ring of lights on the bottom of our UFO. A bunch of these lights don't make sense, though. These lights here don't make sense. We need to get rid of them. So again, you could mask these away, but it's so easy to just grab the stupid eraser tool and just kill them off because we really don't need them. There we go. Something like that looks great. And at this point, you could blur these. You could set them to, like an overlay blend mode. That doesn't really work in this case. Screen is going to look fine. Maybe reduce the opacity just a touch so they kind of blend in. And maybe the ones here up on the darker part of the UFO, I know lights technically don't get darker, but it might just aesthetically look a little bit better if we mask them down a little bit. So throw a mask onto our lights layer. Grab your brush tool, right-click, make the size pretty big. Hardness, 0. And opacity of the brush, like 40%. We're painting with black. And just paint over them a couple times. You can see how it just kind of like blends the whole thing together a little bit more. It seems like it maintains the almost the contrast a little bit better. I don't know, whatever, something like that. That looks cool. The last thing we want to do with the UFO is make a light coming out of the bottom of it, right? Like that's the cliche UFO thing. And we actually have a brush that's going to allow us to do this pretty easily. In the space things, we have this 1404 pixel sized Comet brush. And this is going to be pretty cool. Let's create a new layer here, and we're going to call this UFO spot for spotlight, something like that. And if I just click once, you're going to see I get this big bright wash of light. If my opacity is at 100%, there we go, this big bright wash of light. Great. What we want to do is open up our brushes panel once more and rotate this guy around so the wash of light is coming out at about the angle that it should be for the UFO. That seems about right. I'm no UFO expert, but that seems like that's about the right angle of light for the bottom of the UFO. Oh, maybe not quite. Command or Control T, and you can rotate and adjust the angle and get it just perfect. That's probably about perfect. Something kind of like that. Great. What I'm going to do immediately is just duplicate the UFO spotlight, select the bottom UFO spotlight, and blur it. So we're going to go Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, and maybe blur it 25 pixels. Maybe a little bit more. Maybe let's go 35. Yeah, something like that. Softens the edges nicely. That's the bottom spotlight that I blurred a little bit. All right, and we can do the same kind of blurry trick that we normally do. Set the bottom one to screen, set the top one to linear dodge add, reduce the fill opacity of linear dodge add, and reduce the overall opacity of screen until we get kind of a cool spotlight effect that's blending with what we're doing. If you want to give the spotlight a little bit of a blue tint, that might make it fit in a little bit better. You know what, another thing that'll really make it fit in better is if we give it a little noise. So if foreground and background color set to black and white, go Filter, Noise, Add Noise. 5% is probably good. Now let's go 10 actually. 10, there we go. And then select the other UFO spot, just Command or Control F. It's going to give it a little noise. Really just gives it some texture so it can blend in a little bit better. We're going to zoom in up here. We need to make this blend and appear to be coming out of the bottom of this UFO proper. So here's how we're going to do this. First of all, we're going to group both of the UFO spots into one layer group. Select both layers, Command or Control G. I'm going to name this UFO spot. And once more, let's make UFO all caps like we've been doing. UFO spot, great. We're going to add a layer mask to this. And I'm going to use a little elliptical marquee tool. So what I'm going to do is just maybe select an elliptical marquee shape about that big. Right-click, choose to transform the selection. We're just transforming a selection, no actual shape or anything. And we're going to put this on the bottom of our UFO. I'm going to hold down Alt-Option and stretch the hole in the bottom of the UFO a bit. There we go, something like that. That's great. And I'm going to fill this shape with black. So I'm going to make sure I have the UFO spot layer mask selected. I want to set black as my foreground color. Option delete, that'd be Alt backspace on the PC, right? It's going to almost look like we're just filling it with black because the bottom of the UFO is so dark. Before we do anything else, I'm going to create a new layer, and I'm going to call this opening UFO, or we call it UFO opening. What I want to do here is give this the appearance of like the inside of the UFO where the light would be coming from, and we could slowly mask the light back into this to blend it all together. It'll all make sense in a second. We're going to grab our gradient tool. Again, we're working with a foreground background color of black to white. We're going to choose the reflected gradient icon here. You don't have to worry about reverse. We're working with a plain foreground to background gradient. Great. Start in the middle of the hole and just pull away from that. And you can see we get black in the middle and light on the sides. I think actually we went light in the middle and black on the sides. So maybe, yes, check on reverse. Let's try that again. There we go, something like that. Maybe pull it a little bit further. That way it's kind of more like gray, right? went like gray on the sides. There we go. That looks good. We're going to just zoom back away from that. And now what we need to do is get rid of all the light that's on sort of the top side of our, the hole, if you will, in the bottom of our UFO. So what we're going to do is load the UFO opening as a selection, and we're going to go back to the UFO spot layer mask. So we got the layer mask for that group selected, and we're going to inverse the selection. We're going to grab our brush tool. We're painting with black. Right click. We want to get a nice large soft edged brush. And we're going to paint away all of the light that would go above that little area on the bottom of the UFO, because of course the light should just be coming out of the UFO, right? We're going to inverse the selection. Actually, not even need to inverse the selection. I'm just going to back up, and I'm just going to paint over the edge here of the sort of bottom of the UFO to make sure everything's blended together. And I'll probably even reduce the opacity of that opening in the bottom of the UFO, just to really help things blend together a little bit more. And you can see it looks like the light is just starting in midair. So let's just Command or Control click on that, go back to the UFO spot mask, grab the brush tool, and we're just going to make sure we paint some light in there so it looks like the light is coming from the bowels of our UFO. All right, great. And we can just reduce the opening brightness on the bottom of the UFO until it just blends nicely. So now it looks like that nice light is coming out of the bottom of the UFO. So I think we're good. I think we're good with the UFO for now. Let's take a look at just adding some spaceships kind of up here to the top corner before we go ahead and mask our little person in. I'm going to close down my UFO PSD here because we don't need it anymore. And we're going to go ahead. Actually, I'm going to grab all the UFO stuff here. All these layers, I'm going to just Command or Control G, and I'm going to call this layer group UFO. And you can see very quickly now we can just get rid of the UFO or bring him back. All this stuff, all that stuff for the UFO grouped right up into one nice little area. We can go ahead and create a new layer now, and we're going to just create one ship, and then we're going to copy it. So we're going to call this layer Spaceship, and I'm going to grab my, well, I got my brush tool now. Right click, and the spaceship that I'm looking to work with here, I think is this guy right here. You can see quite massive. Quite a bit larger than we need. So we're going to right click, size them down. It needs to be bigger than that. Bigger than that. Not that big. Let's try going with like 600. I think 600 pixels might be about the right size. Now, you know, a little bit bigger than 600. Let's go 725. There we go. Yeah, 725 looks good. That'll probably be as big as we need it to be. Now, I want to be careful here choosing my foreground color. I want to choose a very like flat... Yeah, very flat bluish color, because we're going to set the blend mode of this layer to multiply and see how that interacts with the background, because we want to really make sure the details of our ship are there. So let's just set this to like multiply. Yeah, that looks pretty good. And we're going to have to get rid of stars that would show through the ships, but I think that looks pretty good. Maybe the color needs to be a little bit lighter. We can show a little bit more. Let's see what that looks like. Let me just click once, twice, set this to layer blend mode of multiply. Yeah, I mean, whatever. It's really close to what we just had before. All right, so we've got this. First thing we're going to do is go ahead and add some lights, just a light in the cockpit and just two little like nose lights, and then we're going to add some afterburn behind it. So create a new layer here, and we're going to call this lights ship for the spaceship. And we're going to use a pale yellow again. This is actually going to be pretty easy to do. Grab the brush tool, right click. We're going to go with a very, very small hard-edged brush. Actually, I probably want to go with a fairly soft-edged brush. Let's go with 50% softness, and let's create or grab a nice pale yellow, kind of like we used before. It's a little bit larger. So these two like holes in the nose of the ship, we're going to fill them with a nice soft yellow light. And then what we can do here is grab like the lasso tool and just create sort of this rough selection in here, and then go select, modify, feather, and feather it like, I don't know, let's try 7 pixels. So it makes it really small, and then just fill that with yellow. And you can see how big it is. It's quite a bit larger than we want it to be. So grab your lasso tool, loop around that, hit Command or Control T, and we're just going to free transform this guy down and maybe stretch him out a little bit, rotate him a little bit, something like that. Command or Control D to deselect. And you can see just like that, we've got 2 lights up in our spaceship. We'll try setting the blend mode of this to something like screen, and maybe reduce the opacity just a little bit to sort of help things blend in a touch more. Reduce the opacity down to like 60%. Yeah, it looks good. All right, so we've added some depth already to our spaceship. Let's create sort of the afterburn effect. So let's create a new layer here, and we're going to call this afterburn. And this is going to take a couple layers to create the afterburn, but it's kind of a cool effect here. Let's paint with the color yellow, or white, excuse me. Grab our brush, right-click, and we're looking for, let's use another one of these Comet brushes. All right, we don't need it to be quite that massive. Let's go with maybe 300 pixels. How's that going to look? Maybe a little bit bigger, maybe 375. Yeah, that looks cool. And let's just rotate this so it's kind of straight up and down. All right, so we've got, you know what, actually I want to make this a little bit bigger. Let's go with like 500, yeah. So 500, I right-click there. See, I get set it to 500. I'm going to paint with white. I'm going to click once. Cool. Now I have the first part of my afterburn. What I need to do is duplicate this 2-3 times. So the top afterburn here, I'm going to color red. So I'm going to select that. I'm going to hit Command or Control J. I'm sorry, not Command or Control J, Command or Control U, and hit Colorize like we've been doing. Reduce lightness, increase saturation. It's going to give me like this crazy fiery red. Great. Now I'm going to hit Command or Control T, and I'm going to mash this down so we kind of have this red head of fire down here now near the base of our fireball. The center of it, I'm going to hit Command or Control U. We're going to make this more of like an orange color, as you would expect from sort of the centery area of a fireball. Right? See how it's already kind of looking fiery? Pretty cool. Command or Control T. Let's crunch this down a little bit. Nudge it upward, just so the bottom here remains the reddest part. And then the last, the kind of really light white part of the afterburn, we're going to make that a very pale yellow color. So once more, I'm going to increase saturation. I'm going to go all the way to like a yellowish, almost green. We can brighten things up a little bit. Great. I'm actually going to duplicate this last afterburn, Command or Control J, and the one on the bottom, I'm going to call this trail, because it'll be sort of like a white trail coming off the back of our afterburn. So I'm going to set the reference point to the very middle of the red stuff, and I'm going to stretch it out. I got to move all 4 of these layers. So select the trail layer, hold down Shift, select the afterburn layer, drag this guy down a little bit. Let's go to the trail, Command or Control T, drag that little reference point way into there, and I'm going to stretch this out quite a bit. We want there to be a lot of like this afterburn coming off of our aircraft. Now you can see it's still kind of that green-yellow color, so hit Command or Control U, set the saturation to nothing, and just the brightness all the way up, so it's definitely white. All right, great. Now we're going to hide the trail for just a second. We're going to set the bottom afterburn to the screen blend mode. We're going to set the orange to the screen blend mode as well, and the red we're going to set to color dodge and see what this looks like. And you can see it looks like really pale and really not that great. Don't worry, what we're going to do is we're going to select all 3 of these afterburn layers and right click and convert them to a smart object. Watch what this does. It sort of blends them in this really amazing way that we get this really cool fireball-y effect. I like it. We can turn the trail back on now because we're still going to have that nice white long trail coming out of the back of our spaceship. And we can group these 2 together. So Command or Control G, we can call this Afterburn. In fact, we can try converting this to a smart object as well. Yeah, that looks good. And we now have the afterburn that's going to be coming out of the back of our aircraft. I'm going to hit Command or Control T. I'll probably crunch it down a little bit, maybe stretch it out a little bit, and then rotate it like so. So it's going to set behind the aircraft, kind of like that. Maybe what I can do is change the perspective a little bit, push it back, open this up, just kind of give it a little bit more of the perspective it would have. Go ahead and hit the check icon to commit that change. Command or Control T, rotate this a little bit more to be in line with kind of the nose and direction of the aircraft itself. Spacecraft. All right, there we go. Now that we've gotten that, we need to obviously mask this so it's not covering up the spaceship. We could move it under the spaceship, but the problem with that is the spaceship is set to that multiply blend mode, so we're going to just see right through it. So we're going to Command or Control click on the spaceship, go to Afterburn, and hold down the Alt or Option key and add a layer mask. You can see that gives us this layer mask, which is pretty much covering it up. I'm going to hit Alt or Option and select my layer mask. I can see that it's only giving us gray, not solid black, so it's not fully going to be covered up. So in this layer mask, I'm going to hit Command or Control L to bring up levels, and I'm going to just boost the blacks way up. So I'm really going to try to darken this thing up. You can see that that does a little bit too much. Let's try backing this off a little bit. Make it as clean as possible. There we go. Hit OK. And then Alt or Option, select the mask, and you can see now it looks pretty good. We can go in with a brush at this point. Right-click, grab a nice small hard-edged brush, and just paint away. I'm painting with the color white here on this this layer mask to just make sure that the afterburn is showing everywhere that it should be, and it's not looking like spotty or janky or just bad. Okay, so I can zoom out. There's the afterburn. If I need to, I could take the entire afterburn at this point and change the blend mode. I don't think I'm going to do that. I think anything's going to just look kind of crazy. And in fact, maybe we could just reduce the overall opacity of the afterburn and see what that looks like. And if the afterburn to you is just too big, you can reduce the link from the layer mask, and we can just crunch it way down, right? Which I'm thinking might be a little bit more in line with what we're going with here. Yeah, I almost think that looks better. I could increase the opacity a little bit. Yeah, that looks cool. And then just link it back up with the layer mask. So if you move it, it moves. Everything moves together. Great. I can try duplicating the spaceship. You know what, actually? That didn't look too bad. Reduce the opacity a little bit. And then maybe select both layers. Command or Control E to merge them together. Don't worry, it just got rid of the multiply blend mode. Bring it back to multiply blend mode. And there we go. So the ship's a little bit darker. Looks pretty good up there. There might be a little bit too much color in our afterburn. I really shouldn't focus on it too much, but I kind of can't help it. I'm going to double click to open up this smart object here, and I think I'm going to use a hue saturation adjustment layer and just increase the saturation a little bit and shift the hue back toward the reds a little bit. It almost looks like there's a little bit too much green in it. There we go. So now it's a little bit more orange. That looks pretty cool. And now that we've got our ship, what we can do is just group these layers up, the afterburn, the spaceship, and the lights ship. Make sure that your afterburn layers link to your afterburn mask, because we're about to resize and move these ships around a little bit. Command or Control G, and we're going to name this spaceship. There we go. And I can just duplicate this at this point. So I can grab my move tool. I can hold down my Alt or Option key and duplicate another one of these spaceships out. Command or Control T. I can size it down a little bit, and I can move, throw this one over here, Alt or Option, and drag out a third spaceship like right there. That's pretty cool. And we can go back to the big one here and drag another, maybe a much smaller one that will go in back here. Right, so we can have sort of one that's trailing behind a little bit. Where would the one trailing behind go? Maybe you could go over there. That's kind of cool. It's probably have to be a little bit smaller than that. You can just kind of play with the sizing and the spacing and everything like that, where they would go. And then what we can do is we can even take these spaceships and we can duplicate all 4 of these layer groups, Command or Control J, and drag them over here. Hit Command or Control T, right click, and choose Flip Horizontal. So it's going to flip them the other direction. And we're going to make these much smaller. But before I do that, I'm going to right-click and just choose to merge all of these layers. So they're not going to quite look perfect, but I actually don't mind that because we're going to make them tiny. We're going to scale them way down, and we're going to put them way off in the distance, maybe down over here. They really should be behind the UFO's spotlight. I'm going to set them to the blend mode of multiply, right? So they go back there, and we're going to drag these. We're going to call this layer spaceships-distant. And I'm going to drag this beneath the UFO group. So the UFO's lights are going over the distant spaceships. So they're just kind of like flying off in another direction. And as I look at this, the spaceships up here, they just look a little bit too blue. So let's go into one of the spaceships here and just hit Command or Control U and reduce the saturation. Maybe increase the brightness a little bit. Reduce saturation to basically nothing. How do I want to do this here? I think I'm just going to increase the lightness to about 30%. Yeah, I think that looks good. So I'm going to open up each of these, and we can quickly apply this to the spaceship by just saying Command Option. That'd be Control Alt U. Great. Control Alt U. The Command Option U on the Mac, right? Ba-boom, ba-boom. So we kind of like, it's almost like lightening up our spaceships a little bit. Maybe they need to be darkened a touch now that we've kind of sapped them of their saturation. Yeah, I like that a lot more. Looks much more like a legitimate spaceship there. Yeah, that's cool. All right, let me just start collapsing these spaceship layer groups. Spaceship, there we go, with the one up top. Cool. All right, so we have all 4 of our spaceships there. They're looking a bit better. They got their lights. They got their afterburners kicking. Everything's looking pretty nice. And I think the sky should be a little bit darker, don't you think? I mean, it looks like it's still a little bit too bright. I'm going to come back down here. I'm going to load the sky as a selection. I'm going to do it right here on top of the layer where we're darkening the tops of the buildings. I'm just going to use a levels adjustment maybe and make it a bit darker. I got to be careful though, because I want to make sure that my spaceships don't go totally dark on me. Something like that looks cool. Yeah, I think that's just a little bit better. Cool. And if I need, this spaceship here really looks like it needs to be brightened up a little bit, if anything. I kind of want all my ships to match. There we go. That's cool. If you have to go in manually and tweak something, hey, by all means, you got to do what you got to do. And of course, last but not least, one of the things that's going to make these look a little bit better is by getting rid of the stars that are behind them. So now that we know where they're going to be placed, we can load them as a selection. So I really probably should have kept all these open. I can Command or Control click and then Command Shift click each other starship or spaceship layer. All right, so I've got all 4 of these spaceships selected. I don't really care about the distant ones. They're not gonna be too noticeable. Come back down to the stars layer. We got that layer mask on the layer group, and we're gonna fill this with black. So set black is my foreground color. Alt or Option Delete. That'd be Alt Backspace Option Delete on the Mac, and I'm just going to fill them with black. Command or Control D to deselect, and you can see now they really look like they're establishing themselves as a little bit more of a sort of middle to foreground object in this image. So I'm going to save the image here, and we're going to take a look at bringing our model into play. So we've got our special operations guy, and what we need to do is just quickly cut him off the background. Now, I'm going to speed it up here. Again, this is going to be another breakout tutorial that's going to come out later where I go over exactly how I make this selection. If you're interested in seeing that, I'll try to remember to put the link in the tutorial here. But if not, it'll be out on my channel. Make sure to stick around and check it out. So I'm going to speed it up here, and we're going to cut out Special Ops Guy in no time flat. All right, so you just saw me cut him out, and he's ready to go. So we can just take him and drag him right over into our document, drop him in place. We had the top layer selected, so he just drops right in place on top of everything. I mean, the edges look pretty clean. They're going to be relatively clean, and he came from a dark background. He's going to be sitting over a dark background, so I'm not really concerned about the edges too much. So what I'm going to do right off the bat is just convert him to a smart object. That's going to just mesh that mask in, but also lock in his size. I'm going to call this layer guy, then I'm going to hit Command or Control T. I'm going to zoom out a little bit, hold down Shift, and we're going to size him down a bit. So I'm going to size him down even more, a little bit more. Maybe something kind of like, I don't know. Maybe something kind of like that. It looks pretty good. I mean, we're kind of cutting off his knuckles there, which is technically not the greatest thing to be doing, but overall the composition is not too bad. I'm gonna go select all. Hotkey is just Command or Control A. I still have the guy layer selected, and I'm using my move tool, and I'm just gonna align him to the vertical center there. Or I'm sorry, the horizontal center, just so side to side he's lined up nicely. And now what we need to do is we need to reduce the contrast of him and add some blue and purple. And then we're going to clip what we're going to do is create a levels adjustment layer here. We're going to clip it to just his layer using the hotkey Control Alt or Command Option G. That means that any crazy effects I do with this levels adjustment are only going to affect him, the layer that it's clipped to. So you can see if I really brighten things up, it's just him being brightened up. I don't want to do that though. I want to reduce contrast by boosting the black output and the white output. You can see, reduce the contrast a bit. Great. We're going to go to the reds channel, and I'm going to increase the cyan a little bit. So I'm just going to throw a little bit of cyan in there, and then I want to throw magenta into here as well. So I'm going to throw some magenta into there. Great. And I also want to throw some blue into here. So I'm going to throw some blue into there. And I'm going to shut him and the levels adjustment off for a second. What I want to do is select my top spaceship layer and use the hotkey Command-Shift-Option-E. That'd be Control-Shift-Alt-E on the PC. It's going to take all visible layers, merge them up to a new layer, and then I'm going to go Filter, Blur, Average. This is going to give me the average color of my entire scene. It's this purplish-bluish color. I'm going to drag it to the top here, and I'm going to call this Colorize. And we're going to turn both of these layers back on. And with this colorized layer, I'm going to use that same clipping hotkey, Command-Option-G, that'd be Control-Alt-G. It's going to just fill him with that bluish-purplish color. And I think I want to use the blend mode soft light here and reduce the opacity to around 60-ish%, something like that. So you can see now he goes from being this green warrior to he's much more blue and purple and kind of starting to fit in with our scene a little bit. And the beauty of just clipping this stuff to him is if we select him and decide, you know what, he actually needs to be a little bit bigger. I just Command or Control T there, by the way. I need to scale him up a little bit, and I maybe want to move him over kind of like this. all of the color and that levels adjustment, they still just stick to him because they're being clipped to his layer wherever it goes, whatever size it is, any changes that get made to it, etc., etc., etc. We want to come down here and duplicate our original flare. So I've got that flare, or the two flare layers. It's this big flare here on the horizon. We're going to duplicate these by holding down our Alt or Option key and dragging them up, 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 up. There we go. And we're going to drop them up on top of everything. So now you can see the flare is intensifying greatly, but more importantly, it's being placed in front of him, so it's really adding this depth and sort of placing him in the scene a little bit more. I'm going to reduce the opacity and the fill opacity of the linear dodge flare just a little bit, but you can see how it's almost wrapping around his uniform when it decides to appear again. There we go. It's kind of wrapping around his uniform and really helping to place him in the scene a little bit more. We're going to do a lot more to really help place him in the scene in a moment, but you can see that's really kind of helping us out. And now we're going to apply a levels adjustment layer, which is going to globally reduce contrast. So we're going to reduce contrast by bumping the black and white outputs, and we're again going to influence by adding a little bit of cyan, a little bit of, wrong way, a little bit of magenta, and a little bit of blue. Not too much, just a little bit. You can see there's before, there's after. We're just going in, we're influencing. You know what? I really think we need to reduce contrast a touch more because we're going to add a bunch of contrast here because I think we're going to do another gradient map adjustment layer. That looks pretty cool, just as a black and white gradient map. And we're going to choose the black to white gradient here, and I'm going to change the color black to 401242, which is kind of this, you know, deep purplish pinkish color. And the highlights are going to be FFE 681, which is a very, you know, pale yellow. Oh, I must have messed that up. Let me try that again. I think I did hit two keys. 681. That's FFE 681. Hit OK. There we go. Hit OK again. So you can see this very purpley color to this very yellowish color. We're going to set the blend mode here to soft light. And what I want to do is, what I need to do, you can see how much it's just going to increase the overall contrast. I need to reduce the layer opacity down to 25, 30%, 35%, maybe something like that. That looks pretty good. And I want to start darkening the bottom of the frame. That's going to just help blend him in even more. So come up here to the top, add a new layer. We're going to call this Darken Base. And I'm going to make sure my foreground color is set to black. Grab the gradient tool once more. Go foreground to transparent. And with a layer like this, by the way, we could just as easily go gradient and just do a gradient fill layer. You'll see why I'm not in just a second. I'm going to drag this up to about there. Whoops, I've got reverse ticked on. Let's make sure we're not doing reverse. There we go. You can see that looks pretty good. I'm going to set this to a blend mode of soft light, and I'll probably reduce the opacity here to like 45%. Let's go 45%. That looks pretty good. You can see there's before, there's after. And I think we want to darken him up even more. So Command or Control click on him to load him as a selection. And on this darken base layer, it's as easy as just hitting Command or Control J and just duplicating and thereby intensifying just the darkness on him. That's pretty cool. And if it needs to be boosted even more, we can just, you know, bring that opacity up to almost 70%. That looks pretty good. So you can see there's before, there's after. I mean, it almost looked naked before. Now it looks like it's being sort of pulled together. I could even increase the opacity of the original darkening layer a little bit more and reduce the opacity on him a little bit. Yeah, that looks even better. So it's kind of pulling everything together. It's just an image by image basis here. We can call this Darken Guy. And I think we need to add some brightness to the top of this whole thing. So double click on the quick mask icon right down here in the bottom of the toolbar. It's this guy right there. Double click on that. We want to make sure that color indicates is ticked to selected areas. Hit OK. And we're going to grab our brush tool. We're painting with the color black. Make sure the opacity is at 100%. I'm going to right click. I'm going to make my brush even bigger, maybe like 1200 pixels. And this all just depends on the size of your image. And I'm going to paint like this. This is all the area of the image that I think needs to be brightened up. I'm going to hit the letter Q. It loads what I painted as a selection. I'm going to go Select, Modify Feather, and I'm going to feather this by a lot, like 450 pixels. And then I'm going to go and throw another levels adjustment layer onto here. I'm going to open up the brightness at the top of my screen or at the top of this image, and I'm going to boost the blacks a little bit. So anytime you brighten something up, you need to make sure you compensate with some contrast, and that's what sliding the black slider up is doing. It's just pumping some contrast in up there so it doesn't just look like faded color. So you can see before, after. We brighten it up, we maintain color, we maintain contrast. Looks pretty cool. And next up, we're going to throw a channel mixer onto this. I love the channel mixer. I'm going to set it to monochrome, which effectively converts us to black and white. In the red channel, I'm going to bump this up to like 60. I'm going to leave the green at right around 40. I'm going to bump the blues to about 25, and I'm going to bump the constant as well to like 5 or 6. Maybe like 7, something like that. Really brighten it up. That looks pretty cool. And now I'm going to set this to the blend mode multiply. And you can see there's before, there's after. You can see what this is doing. It's really adding a lot of mood to this image. Too much, in fact. Too much contrast, too much mood. We're losing a lot of detail. So we begin to just scroll this back until it looks about right. And I think there's almost too much blue in this. So let's come back down to this levels adjustment layer. I think we added some blue with this levels adjustment layer. Maybe we'll just shift it actually toward the yellow side a little bit. That looks good. Let's go to the greens. Do I want to go purple? Do I want to go? I almost want to go. I'm almost tempted to go a little green. Maybe I'll just set it back to neutral. And then, yeah, I think more teal. That looks pretty cool. More teal. We definitely want like some teal, bluish colors in the overall image that are really going to influence and contrast with. Let's maybe make our darker color here on this gradient map a little bit more blue, and make sure that the brighter color is a little bit more orangey yellow, something like that. Hit OK. And all of these colors, all of these different blend modes are all working together to kind of create this little bit of magic for us. And one of the things here in this darkened base, you can see this is basically killing off all the detail in the foreground. So maybe, number one, reduce the opacity a little bit, but also we might need to mask it here on this side. So throw a mask onto this darkened base layer, grab the brush tool, again, reduce the opacity a lot. It's all subtleties here. We're going to paint with the color black, and we're just going to come in here and paint away until we can just see some of those buildings coming back, and we're getting our detail back in the foreground. So you can see there's before I masked it, there's after I masked it. So it makes a big difference. We're getting some detail back in there. All right, and last but not least, we need to place the sort of night vision optic thing over his eye. So we're going to create a new layer here, and we're going to call this NV for night vision, or infrared, or whatever it may be. We're going to grab our brush tool. We're going to right-click. This is where you can use your optical flare. So we want like a very long, thin flare. I'm going to go with this flare right here. What does that look like? Oh, my opacity is at 13%, so it's going to be difficult to tell. And I want my foreground color to be white. Yeah, that's actually really cool. I'm going to go ahead and just place that. I want to click it right over like that little eyepiece thing that he's got. So we're going to just use one of them. And I might even stretch it side to side. So Command or Control T, hold down the Alt or Option key, and really stretch it way out. That looks cool. And then I'm going to hit Command or Control J. And the bottom layer is the one we're going to color. We want to make it red. So hit Command or Control U. We're going to go colorize. We're going to reduce the lightness. We're going to increase the saturation. We want this to be like a fiery, very bright red color. We're going to set this to the blend mode of screen. Looks cool. And then the top layer, of course, we're going to go linear dodge add and just reduce the fill until it really blends. And we can reduce the opacity of that red a little bit as well. But I think really just want to aggressively reduce the fill opacity of that top layer, because I really like the way that looks. Increase the opacity of the bottom layer. Pretty cool. Maybe I'll even hit Command or Control J to intensify that a little bit. I said it's like overlay maybe. That looks kind of bad. Let's go set it to soft light, see what that looks like. That kind of controls it a little bit more. Yeah, I think soft light's good for the third night vision effect. And then kind of the last thing I would do is, I still kind of feel like it's a little bit too dark. Let me just take away some of the darkness a little bit more. I'm just setting that multiply channel mixer. I'm just reducing the opacity. Another thing I could do is pump some more constant into it and just kind of brighten things up. Maybe brighten up the blue channel a little bit, like so. I brighten the blue channel, maybe take it to about 50, and then increase the opacity of that layer to help blend it all together a little bit more. Yeah, I like that a lot more. That's pretty cool. The last thing I'm going to do is I have an action that I like to use here in the Actions panel, and this is the Add Noise action. It's just to add some finishing grain. I'm going to play it. It's going to add 2 layers of grain, a fine noise and a chunky noise. And they basically, if you zoom in and take a look, they're just adding this grain that makes everything look more realistic. It's a really cool effect. And, here we go. We have our final finished soldier effect. So for creating this daytime to nighttime composite effect, and by the way, we can go back again and look. Here's the image that we began with right there, and here's what we've just finished with. So to create this beginning to nighttime space attack scene, and you can leave the spaceships out, just do the soldier. You could throw any kind of subject in over this type scene that you like, of course. So for masking and speeding through parts of this tutorial and using brushes in somewhat of a different way and creating afterburns and night vision goggles and more adjustment layers than I ever want to think about, and layer masks on layer groups and every other complicated this, that, and the other along the way. That is it. Get it? Got it? Good. Nathaniel Dodson, tutvid.com. I'll catch you in the next one.